Bill can explain. We're ready to go worldwide.
We're on right now.
And we're on right now. Oh, that'll be interesting. I want to give our speakers a chance to digest for a minute before I have them speak. And the first speaker is Gerald O'Driscoll. He is a senior fellow at the Cato Institute, and his list of accomplishments would take me half an hour, and I'm long-winded as it is, to tell you about. But I want to give him a minute or two just to relax.
Walk up here.
And we'll have him come up and speak when he's ready.
Whenever you want.
We're ready. If you would give a warm welcome to Gerald O'Driscoll. If you get on the line, please start going to our website. We have so much information. You can go rmcnnv.org, and it's got all the background, and Nicole and Gerald. Okay, go ahead.
The shortcut is Republican Men's Club, rmcnn.com. So right now loud. We have another shortcut too. It's just simply, remember this is really easy, rmc.club.
I don't know what you're
rmc.club, nothing, no com, just rmc.club. Bring you right to the site. We're trying to make it really easy to get to the site, rmc.club. So I hope to see the thousands of people going there.
And after the speakers have spoke, we're going to be handing out a flyer that'll tell you about that. One last thing for after Gerald speak. We are accepting memberships, both associates and members and rejoining. You only pay half the fee, like full membership $17.50, and it's good until January. Because January the 1st, all dues will come due. We'll put everybody on January the 1st. With that in mind, please welcome Gerald O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Ray. So I'm just curious, how many people are familiar with this issue, the margins tax, and what it means? Good. I'm not going to belabor points, but I'm just going to go over things quickly. First of all, I came with two handouts. They're over there. One is an example that I'm going to go through, but you do not need it in front of you, but you can take it with you when you leave. And the other is our stop sign, which is our most favorite to leave behind. And the stop sign really says the whole thing. Stop, no on 3. Jobs are the key to Nevada's future, not new taxes. This is going to morph into yard signs, bumper stickers, and if anybody is interested and has a bar, we can produce coasters. But that really summarizes the issue. So it's a ballot initiative. We have no choice. We've got to fight it. The biggest problem I've been concerned about from day one is there would be complacency. Excuse me a second.
Thank you.
Is that there would be complacency, and I'm already having people say, oh, well, I think it's going to lose. We don't have to worry about it. No, we have to worry about it because people think it's going to lose. The teachers have barely begun to gear up. They have their own soapbox, and they're a formidable opponent. As you all know, they are the source of this ballot initiative. Some of the high points that I really want to emphasize and is that this tax hits businesses regardless of whether they're profitable. And that's what's really pernicious about it. And there are certain classes of businesses that tend not to be profitable. One class of business that's not profitable are startups. Any of you that have ever started a business, you know you go several years, sometimes longer, without booking any profits because you're investing in your business. And when it's successful, it's expanding, you're investing more in your business. Think of Amazon for a prototypical business that went years and years and years without any profits. So one of the problems is here we have an economy that's one of the laggards. We still have the second highest unemployment rate in the country. Thank God for Rhode Island. We finally got edged out to the #1. job, but that's a horrible comparison because if anybody knows anything about Rhode Island, that state is a basket case and has been for a long time. So that's not very comforting that we're number 2. So here we are. We've had not very spectacular recovery. I think if you look around Reno, it looks like things are finally picking up. I just came back from Vegas. Things are picking up down there. But the last thing we need is something that chokes off the start of new businesses. So that's one of the really bad consequences. It's 2% on gross revenue with some deductions, but my little example, which is our favorite example, is of C&J Trucking Company. It grosses $2 million. The tax is going to be paid on that $2 million. But after all the expenses, and we peel out all the expenses, this little trucking company, which is actually based on a typical trucking company, small trucking company, ends up with a $100,000 profit. It's out of that little profit that the 2% on $2 million has to be paid. And with its deduction, that amounts to $72,000. And where is that going to come out of? That's going to come out of something. And as we explain, it comes out of one employee who we named Janet. And so our take on this is we're trying to save Janet's job. And there are going to be a lot of Janets in this state whose job we're trying to save. We don't know who they are, but if this tax passes, we're going to find out who they are because they're going to be joining the ranks of the unemployed. The simplest thing is when you take out the average deductions, it's a 1.4% tax on gross revenues. So that for every $1 million in sales, a company's going to pay $14,000. Our proponents have planted the idea that it's just a tax on large business. But as we gave in this example, $2 million gross in the trucking business is not a large trucking company. They have 10 trucks. That's not a large trucking company. The average McDonald's grosses $2 million. A lot of pizza parlors easily gross $1 million. They don't necessarily make, the proprietor doesn't necessarily take home very much. We know of a business in northern Nevada that grosses $2.1 million, and its owner takes home $60,000. And again, the gross margin tax of the $2 million is going to have to be paid out on $60,000. People say you can pass taxes on. I don't know any businessman that can pass any costs on right now in this economy. Now, we know that there are really 2 types of businesses in the state of Nevada. One is already grossing over $1 million, and the others want to grow to where they're grossing over $1 million. So potentially this tax affects everyone. And it potentially affects everyone because, gosh, Randy, I always get confused about this. In 3 or 5 years, the legislature can revisit this. They can raise the rate. They can expand the base. They can start taxing on a lower amount, under $1 million. And you know, what's going to happen, and Randy can speak to this, if this tax passes, businesses are going to come in and seek exemptions. And the more businesses get exempt, the more the base is going to have to spread out in order to raise the revenue they're hoping to raise. And I want to emphasize another point, which you probably heard, but it's very important to remember. This $1 million is a threshold. It's not a credit. In Texas, it's now a credit. Everybody tells you there's a margin tax in Texas. There's about much resemblance between their margin tax and this proposal. You know, as between a skunk and a deer, they both walk on the ground, and that's it. We have the skunk. But in Texas, they now, $1 million is a credit. But here it's a threshold. So if you're making grossing $999,000 in 13, and in 2014 you grow your business a little bit, and you gross $1.1 million, you're going to pay the tax on the whole $1 million. The other thing that's myth is that this is going to increase spending on education. It is true that all the receipts from the tax are dedicated to the distributed school account, but the legislature has in its power to redirect money that is currently going to education and other uses. This is what has happened in the state before with dedicated taxes. The room tax in Marshall-Clark County, that's what happened to it. Monies were diverted. And this, of course, is what happened in California with the lottery. Remember, that was going to solve education spending in California. Okay. Again, if people want the comparison to the Texas tax, it was first of all put in as part of a tax reform, so it wasn't just an increase in taxes. Other taxes were lower, and the Texas tax is a half to a quarter of the proposed tax here in the state of Nevada. So I was given 15 minutes, but I'm more like 10 at this point, and I'm just going to finish up because I've hit most of my high points. Our website, the other thing I like about this handout, it is both our website and our PAC name. Our website is nvjobkiller.com, because that's what we say this tax is. It's a job killer. It's bad for business, for workers, and for families. Education cannot be improved by killing Nevada's economy. Private sector jobs are the source of all government funding. The path to better education, as for all other government programs, is a better economy, and that's what we need to be thinking about. The margins tax is not a path to a better economy. We are often asked by folks, our PAC, is often asked by folks like you how you can help. We welcome your contributions if you go online, again, at www.nvjobkiller.com. You can give money. We welcome support. We're a grassroots organization. We go out, we give talks to groups like this. We'd love to give talks to your employees, explain why it's going to hurt them. We are gearing up for canvassing. We don't know how much we're going to be able to do because it depends on waiting on funding, but we think we're going to be able to have a statewide canvassing campaign. We've got a firm lined up to do it, and we're going to do the grassroots and let the coalition do all the fancy media, which is way outside our budget and conference. With that, I'll take some questions. Thank you.
We're going to have questions now. We'll go around. Gary and I.
One behind you.
Here we go.
This tax is very complicated. It's my understanding that the tax can be a tax on top of a tax. So you get, somebody pays 2%, then somebody else sells something to someone else and they pay 2%, and then 2% on top of that. Am I correct? That's really a problem.
You're getting at one of the complexities of the tax. Well, it's the complexity of all taxes. There might be a certain amount of tax shifting. This can occur. Maybe some firms may be able to increase their prices somewhat, but everybody can't shift the tax. Somebody is going to end up paying this tax. And I think the first approximation is it's going to be the firms of which it's levied. Now, firms are very adept. It is true they're very adept at shifting to the extent they can. I gave this talk at UNR to the Economics Club. If you want to know a set of people that are really attuned to issues like this, it's the students, because they know all of these ideas affect their chance of getting a job. So I actually ran up against students who were versed on this tax. And one of the students told me about a friend of his who works in a construction company. And what his boss said is, you know, I can't deduct what I spend, if this tax goes in, I can't deduct what I spend on tools. These are construction workers, and the construction firm supplies the tools to the workers. But he said there is one formula for the tax that allows me to deduct compensation, your wages. So if this tax passes, he's already telling his workers what's going to happen. I'm going to raise your wages, but you're going to have to buy your own tools. So is that a shift? Yeah. They partially evade the tax? Yeah. But that just means someone else is going to, you know, the tax is going to have to go up to the degree that firms do this, and will wait 3 or 5 years for the legislature to do that.
Hi, Lawrence County for Summit 30. Can you confirm that if the margin tax were to pass, there's no accountability for how the money's spent? So hypothetically, if it were to pass, the money were to go in the pool, every teacher could grant themselves a raise, never improve education whatsoever.
Well, I don't know if teachers can grant themselves a raise, but there's no guarantee that even if there were increased education spending as a result of this tax, and that's an if, that it's going to go into the classroom, that it's going to go in and help anything that people want. So you're correct.
What would happen on a holding company that's holding operations from outside the state?
It is a tax on sales in the state. So if you're selling into the state, you can come under this tax. Now the converse of that is if a firm is producing in Nevada and all its sales are outside the state, as the tax is written, that firm isn't going to pay any tax. Now how long do you think that's going to last? When a firm is grossing millions of dollars, are entirely escaping the tax, and small businesses are doing all their sales in Nevada, it's not fair, and it isn't fair, so it ain't gonna last. That's another way in which this tax can spread, but right now that's how it's written. By the way, this bill, as I understand it, is so complex that the tax department has no idea what they're gonna do if it passes.
Good afternoon. I believe this is called a gross margin tax. And obviously in every business, you start with gross. Amazingly, an awful lot of businesses don't find all that money hidden in the books. Some of it goes under the table. So I would imagine the gross would go down, and then on one side of that, I believe that my CPA is not going to raise my rate because he's going to be taxed on his professional duties.
Yeah. There's going to be a whole tax authority that will have to be invented to make sure you don't do things like that.
That's the good sheriff of Nottingham, right, with Robin Hood.
Right. That's the other thing. It's going to be very burdensome. You know, they say, well, all these small businesses won't have to pay the tax, but they're going to have to file a tax form to show that they didn't have to pay the tax. Everybody's going to have to file, just like the individual income tax. We all file, even if it's to show we don't owe any tax. You can't just say, I don't owe tax this year, I'm not filing. Is that Bob Lucy?
Bob Lucy, Washington County Commission District 2. Jerry, you were saying in regards to new business, right now currently there are quite a few businesses that are already over the threshold of $1 million. Do you know the percentages that we currently, that are of businesses in Nevada that are over that $1 million threshold currently?
I see different estimates, and I've seen 20%, I've seen 25%. But the estimates are that they employ the majority of workers in the state. So the jobs of the majority of workers in the state are at stake. And that's one of the reasons we're focusing on jobs, because we know that the majority of workers' jobs are going to be impacted by this tax. Tom?
Jerry, how big will the bureaucracy be that will form the franchise tax board of the IRS for Nevada? And is there any plan as to where the funds come from that?
The funds are going to come out of the tax, and I think initially the tax is a little higher the first year in order to fund the tax is a little higher the first year in order to fund this bureaucracy that's going to come into being.
But it just seems as though we're a state without income tax.
I know.
All of a sudden, we're going to set a foundation for income tax.
That's right. That's my opinion. It's not in the bill, but since you asked the question, that's my opinion.
Ben.
Recently, by the way, when I was growing up, teenagers used the word gross in a different way.
Yeah. It's gross.
Recently, I had the privilege of traveling throughout the state and talked to small business folk all over the state. very often, the first question out of their mouth when I went in to speak to them was, what do you think of the gross margins tax? They're terrified. How many of you have ever been to the Pig in Winnemucca? Nobody. You gotta go when you're in Winnemucca. It's a combination restaurant and bar.
Yeah.
I talked to one of the owners. They employ a total of 16 people. He said that they had calculated the tax would hit them for $40,000 a year. And that would mean 3 less workers, down to 13, and 1 full day that they would not be open at all.
I think that's a real world story, and it's going to be told around the state. And I wrote it down.
I have a question. Psychologically, it seems that the business community, representing millions and millions of dollars, should have more clout than the teachers' union, which are very important. I understand, having been in education most of my life, however, the disproportionate importance, why is the business community not being taken seriously in this tax? I'm confounded.
The only answer I can have is businessmen are greedy and children are doing, I'm sorry, teachers are doing it all for the children.
Since when is the teachers' union ever interested in teaching? I'm sorry. But number one, I also want to bring up something like in California. When we voted for that the lottery, that was it. So 50%, or I should say all the profits would go to the school. Only one thing wrong. For every dollar that went to the school, there was $1 taken out of their school budget. So what makes anybody believe that if they pass this, that 1 nickel is going to go to the schools?
There's just no guarantee. I can't emphasize that enough. Your point is well taken. By the way, we have teachers in our coalition because they recognize this is not the solution to funding education. And they recognize their union has done them no good service. We're certainly not anti-teaching. Nor for that matter, anti-union. The other unions haven't gone along with the teachers.
Thanks. A little more preaching to the choir. I recently just completed a primary, and during my walking and talkings, I met with a businessman who, actually 2 businessmen, even as of this weekend. They have businesses out in Mound House, just outside of Carson. Recently moved from California to evade their taxes. One of them was not aware of the margins tax. We got talking about it. Both of them, though individual conversations, said they will close down their businesses come December. Would be a total of about 50 employees. One had about 30, the other had about 20. One businessman I spoke to this weekend hadn't even heard about the margins tax. He was talking with a friend of his, he does medical supplies, a friend of his from Southern California moving their business up. He actually got on the phone while we were conversing, and there's a hold now on that move. This tax will kill us, is the easiest way to put it. The sad part is, and what I'm preaching is the numbers that don't know about it still, the businessmen that don't know about it. That's where we've got to do more.
People are selling, they have multiple franchises, they're selling some of them so they can fall to look. Pat?
Thanks, Jerry. The question was just asked, why hasn't the business community had more of an impact on this? Well, in fact, you have. This was passed as an initiative by the teachers union. That's true. It came to the legislature last time and didn't even get a vote. And I would say the reason for that is that businesses had an impact upon lawmakers, both Democrats and Republicans, and that's why it was never heard. What we now have is what some of you left California as a result of. We now have budgeting at the ballot box by initiative. And that's another reason why we don't want to go down that road.
Thanks, Pat, for making that point. That's important. This is the tip of an iceberg. If this passes, we'll just get more.
Okay. What about the realtors, the real estate community? I mean, they're going to be hit very, very hard. Everything is picking up. Properties are moving. People are moving in. They're getting the companies. They're selling. My daughter's a realtor, and she's representing companies who are bringing people in. Are they aware of what's happening here? What about the realtors?
The realtors have become aware of it. I just spoke one of our members of our coalition, Maria Martinez. She is a realtor, and she just had a presentation on it. It will totally disrupt their compensation system because, and again, there's no regulations been written yet, and it's very hard to be definitive on this because it's the regulations, not the law, that's going to decide who pays what, when, and where. But as I understand it, the realtor is going to be liable for the whole gross, but he's paying commissions, which may not be held to be compensation and hence not deductible, to his agents. So is he going to deduct the 2% out of the commissions? I don't know. And to the agents, what are they going to deduct? What are their costs? Randy, do you want to say something?
Yes, sir. Thanks, Jerry. This is obviously very convoluted, and if you follow it all, even the definition of cost of goods sold on a federal level versus the state level would be totally different and likely to end up in court. And I think we wouldn't see this were to pass a lot of court cases. If you take a minute though and talk about what's called the affiliate connection.
Assemblyman Kerner asked about the affiliate problem, which nobody can, again, it's very convoluted and nobody can be certain what an affiliate is going to be. But supposing you have multiple businesses and they might be in, a lot of times, say, somebody owns 2 dry cleaners, they may be separately incorporated, they may not be separately incorporated, but this tax is going to sweep them into one business. Now, where you get it complicated is supposing you own one 100% and you own 50% of another. There's going to be a threshold, and that second business will now still be affiliated with your first business, but your partner may become affiliated with your first business, even though he has no stake in your first business. No one knows exactly how it will play out, but you may have diverse business interests, and you may not consider yourself a millionaire. You may not think you're grossing $1 million. None of your businesses individually may gross $1 million, but and you may not be reporting them. You may be reporting them all separately, but all of a sudden you're grossing over $1 million. And this is a thicket, and no one knows how we're going to get through that one if it passes. A question over here because he hasn't asked one yet. Yeah. Oh yeah.
We'll do Lauren. We'll do Lauren, and then I want to have, because she's going to discuss something.
Okay, whatever you say.
Go ahead.
I have a question. The RMC.CLUB recently spent $150,000 to bring movie film development to Nevada.
Yes.
0 contracts.
Right.
How do you see the margin tax impacting film production in Nevada, given they make no revenue for the first few years of production?
Well, if they make no revenue, they aren't going to pay the tax, but they may make revenue and no profit. I know Haya Masters, she just moved up here from Southern California. So as soon as she starts grossing revenue, she's going to get hit with the tax long before anything goes to her bottom line. Sir, quickly?
Yes, very quickly. I've been in financial services 34 years, used to work at the top of Wall Street with E.F. Hutton in the 80s. One thing I want you to all think about is what caused the big crash in 2008? Mostly what are called derivative investments. What this margin tax is really kind of like a form of derivative investment in the respect that it shouldn't even be on the ballot. So just give some thought to that.
Thank you. Thank all of you, and please do take home the material that I left over here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jerry. And people can stay afterwards and ask Gerald more questions. And we're going to have Nicole. But before I introduce Nicole, I forgot a couple of people. One is Miranda Hoover. She's with the College of Republicans, and she was helping with the ticket. Stand up, Miranda. And I think you'll see her in the future. I'm sure she'll run for politics. she wanted to make sure that I introduced her to the media. By the way, KOH was here, they've interviewed, they've talked to people. She had, Emily Skiles is on at 2 o'clock, so she had to get back to the station, but the gentleman from the Las Vegas Review Journal was here, so be on your best behavior. With that in mind, I'd like to introduce, again, someone that has a very long resume, if you get on our site. Nicole Willis Grimes. She's with the Ferraro Group, and that group is helping to do the campaign to defeat that. Nicole?
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, and thanks to Jerry also for your presentation. Very helpful. There's a lot of what I could say that he has already said as well, so I won't take your time doing that. From the campaign standpoint, you know, we've looked at this, or looking at it last year. The campaign itself is called the Coalition to Defeat the Margin Tax, and some of you may recall when the proponents were gathering signatures about 2 years now ago to bring it in front of the legislative session last session. They were going around saying, we need money for our kids, this is for the kids, this is for education. Really easy way of signing up people. What they weren't doing was telling them what this all meant, what the pitfalls were, what the uncertainties were, where the flaws were. The bottom line, as Jerry mentioned, it's deeply flawed, very costly. No plan, no guarantee. It's a job killer. It kills our economic development recovery that we're trying to do, that Nevada is lagging behind. It's like throwing an anchor to somebody who's swimming to shore. I mean, those businesses, especially the small ones, that are just keeping their head above water and are starting to see some profits coming in, are starting to come back, hire more people. This is a killer for them. The proponents, as he mentioned, want you to think that this is about going after the big businesses. We need Walmart, we need Target, we need Lowe's, Home Depot to pay more money for and pay their fair share for our kids' education. The problem is that it does hit the small businesses significantly. And that's what Nevada is made of, really, are these small businesses, and God bless them that they've kept their heads above water through the recession, and this is just going to be a killer for them. On top of it, we are, from the campaign standpoint, from the coalition standpoint, we're looking at some information and trying to do some analysis on what this really means for the average voter, because we know, and we're hearing anecdotally, especially from those mom and pop stores, retail stores, grocery stores, that they are going to have to raise prices. So it's not just the businesses that pay for this, it's the consumers. This is not free money. So the trickle-down effect on who really pays for this, it's the voters who pay for it. It's the Nevada citizens, it's the hardworking people of our state who pay for this. I know there was a question, I believe, Tom, you had asked about how the implementation of it is going to be paid for. There is, in the initiative, all 27, depending on your formatting, it's anywhere from 27 to 31 pages. It's a lot to digest. There is a slight increase for banks, for the financial institutions, to pay for this for a certain period of time to cover the administration of it. This goes into effect, if it passes in November, it goes into effect January 1. So businesses will have to start keeping track on their books to account for, first of all, whether or not they're going to be subject to this, and then the 3 different ways of determining what their exposure is, what the margin is that ultimately gets that 2% hit. They'll have to start in January. That's a really short period of time for a regulatory body to put together all the regulations, to have the hearings, and to put it into place. The head of the tax division has said that he believes he needs approximately 100 new people to deal with the regulatory process and the implementation. He's very concerned too, because, and I know him quite well, he's a very smart man, knows taxes inside and out, but since this is so new, he is having a hard time actually advising businesses on how to interpret a lot of this. We've had several different attorneys take a look at it, and as far as the partial ownership, there are a lot of questions. And in order to have economic viability and recovery in the state, businesses need certainty and predictability, and this does just the opposite. So those are some of the points that I wanted to kind of hit on as well from the coalition standpoint. Real quickly, I know somebody mentioned real estate. I believe out of the top 5 industries in the state that will be hit severely, real estate industry is one of those top ones. Insurance is another one. Retail. I mean, these are day-to-day businesses that we all have to pay for and that we interface with on a daily basis. And so that's why it really is a true hit to the consumers, to all of us in the state. Real quickly, I'll give you kind of an overview of the coalition itself and what we've been trying to do on the ground as well. From the coalition, there are 4 organizations that started who were involved when this was going through the court system and trying to keep it off the ballot. The Mining Association, Retail Association, Las Vegas Metro Chamber, and the Resort Association, so the gaming casino properties. Since then, we have grown to almost 2,000 individuals, businesses, and business associations, organizations in our coalition who have signed up and said, you know, we have serious problems. Education is important to the state, but this is not the way to go about doing it. So we have a website. You can get to it either through stopthemargintax.com or no13.com. The list of those supporters are on there, as well as a toolkit. It's fact sheets. If you have a business yourself and are interested in trying to work with your employees and customers, vendors, etc., we're there to also help and provide you information to answer questions that might come up. And finally, we're also working with businesses and individuals who have those personal anecdotal stories. I appreciate the story about the pig. That's a prime example of what we're seeing. My role in the campaign is doing some outreach work, going not just in the Reno Sparks area, but going to small chambers of commerce, business groups, et cetera, throughout the rural communities as well. I will be in Fallon tomorrow. I was in Dayton last week. I've been out to Fernley and working with some of our coalition partners. We've reached out to Ely, Winnemucca, Elko, Pahrump, et cetera. So that's what we're doing from the campaign standpoint, is making sure we get that message out. Again, first blush, it's for education, it sounds great, but getting that information out about why this is so deeply flawed and so costly to all of us is key and our #1 goal throughout the campaign. And with that, if anybody has any additional questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, there's something. Thank you, Nicole. And now we can have questions. John, is there a mic back there? Here, I'll take one.
Real fast, when you ask a question, say your name at the start, and I'll try to brief people next time with more like production.
By the way, we are getting stations from Cincinnati and different places saying they're hearing this.
That's what I'm doing.
John Holman. Are nonprofits exempted from this, and specifically are unions exempted from this?
501c3s are exempt. Now, with that, and I believe Assemblyman Kerner had mentioned, you know, the prospects of lawsuits once this goes through. The legislature cannot touch this for the first 3 years after it passes. And so if there are some questions about loopholes or questions about, well, we as a business or as an organization don't think we're subject to this, we're going to hold off. So it goes into effect 2015, so in 2018, January 1st, 2018, there could be some repercussions for organizations or businesses who may not have thought, because it is so complex, because of all the flaws in it, that they didn't have any exposure, that it comes to bear that they actually do. And so there could be some lawsuits, and lawsuits against the state. And so, yeah, so there, you know, for now, we know nonprofits are, but there are some who think they may or may not. I actually, about 2 months ago, I spoke to the Rural Electric Co-op, and we're pretty sure, and we keep telling people, you know, look at the initiative too, just to make sure, because We can give you advice and general information about what we already do know, but there are still so many uncertainties. And so we really urge folks to have your attorneys and your accountants take a look at the initiative to figure out exactly what that exposure would be.
Hi, my name is Bud Vancott, and I brought a company out of California into Nevada 9 years ago. And we went through a big slump in 2008, and we were pushing near $1 million, and we dropped down to about 800,000. And we're finally getting right back up again. But my big question is, as I run a machine shop, and we are there's no organization that talks to all the machine shops, that talks to that kind of business. I don't talk to bar owners, I don't talk to food distribution places. Somehow there needs to be some coordination to get people involved. I could walk the Mound House area, and I'm sure that I could get 90% participation in coming in to do something. But we need to know what to do.
Exactly, yeah, and I appreciate that question. As I mentioned, we're going out and speaking to pretty much anyone who will listen to us, and then some.
Chamber of Commerce, are you involved with them?
Oh, very much so, very much so. And not just the chamber here, Reno Sparks area, but I've spoken to the Dayton Chamber, I'm speaking to the Highlands Chamber tomorrow, so all the chambers of commerce, development authorities, but then there are also industry-based associations. So about 2 months ago, I spoke to Auto Body Group. There are about 15 owners, co-owners, CPAs from the various auto body shops here in town. And so we are getting out there, and word is spreading. We've received, I think, 4 requests just in the past 3 days, to do a presentation here in the next month or two. So we continue to get those requests, but also we are actively going out and contacting people. Have you heard about this? Do you have questions about it? We've got information, we've got analysis on it. Who else do we need to talk to? So I was also doing that follow-up. So, yeah.
Randy?
I'm Randy Printer. Just to the point that Jerry made, the first 3 years of this thing, we are not allowed, if it should pass, there cannot be a change by law, by the initiative. And in fact, the next opportunity would be the next session of the Assembly or the legislature, which would actually
2019, right?
Which would actually extend it out even that much further. And to your business, I think about the middle of December, I furlough your accounts receivable department so that you don't go over $1 million. And really and truly, people will do that. I can see it now. There'll be a lot of vacation taken in December.
No, it's bifurcate business.
Won't help.
Won't help because of the affiliation.
You'll be caught under the affiliates.
Randy?
Yeah,
Randy.
Randy Lloyd. We've heard a lot about the bad effects of the margins tax. I would like to see if you have any idea of what the chances are that it will pass. This is a midterm election. We have a little bit more sophisticated voters, perhaps. We're going to suppress the vote, of course, of minorities and young people. And I would imagine they might be more interested in passing this. So have you made any kinds of evaluations on the electorate this year and what they're likely to do about this?
I am not aware of any current polling. I know, and this is before I had come on board to the campaign earlier this year, that I believe there had been some polling last year that the face value do support more funding for education if this tax passes. I think without going into details on all the negatives, the pitfalls of it, the lack of clarity, all the flaws and how costly it is, I think there's some concern that without further education, there could be a chance that this passes. I don't have all the data right on me, and like I said, I would hate to speculate right now short of having some hard polling data. But again, I just would like to remind people, when the proponents are gathering signatures for this, do you support education? Do you support better quality education in the state, it's hard to say no to that, and of course we do. And this campaign does too. I want to make sure to make that very clear. I mean, this is not an anti-education campaign. We support education. We believe our kids deserve the best education, but this is not the way to go about it.
Bob Burgoyne.
Bob Burgoyne. What happens when out-of-state companies do $1 million plus business in the state of Nevada? How are they going to get the money?
How are they going to be able to continue profiting in this state if they're out of state with this tax? Or maybe I misunderstood the question.
How does the state collect the tax?
How does the state collect? Ask Chris Nielsen from the tax division. It's a good question. That will have to be taken up by the tax division and the regulatory process of how they put that into place.
My name is Frank Britton. Question, I've read that the unions, other than the teachers' unions, have withdrawn their support for this measure. Is that true, or what extent is it true?
That is true, and thank you. I appreciate you raising that, because that is evidence of how flawed and costly this issue is, how there's no guarantee, no plan, etc. The concerns that this initiative is raising amongst a lot of different groups. Businesses, small businesses are sort of a no-brainer. I mean, people are on the ground in the community, they're running their business, they get it. They understand why this is not the way to go about trying to improve education. However, amongst our coalition members and amongst those who are taking a public stand in opposition in question 3, AFL-CIO, I believe it was in their May meeting that they had with all of their membership up here, they voted against it, which typically AFL-CIO is lockstep with teachers, especially on tax issues. When this was first drafted, they were on board. And then the proponents started taking it in a different direction and understanding how it affects jobs, how it affects small businesses that employ a lot of the workers who are union members, who are non-teacher union members. It raised a lot of concerns and questions. And the uncertainty that this measure brings, I think just gave the unions pause and said, wait a minute, we can't support something that's going to kill our jobs. So I appreciate you bringing that up. In addition to the small businesses, individuals, we have AFL-CIO on board as well with us.
I think Ken does.
Thank you. Obviously, we all know that this is the teachers' union that is supporting this. This isn't the individual teachers. But however, saying that, you know, we have found forever, and I can recall 70 years of my life, that the teachers have been saying, or the teachers' unions, that if we just have a little bit more money, we can do so much better job. And I think we all need to look at their record for the last 70 years. I don't see anything there that they should be proud of. So I think that that's the other thing, is they have no interest in what this state is. They have no interest in business. They only have an interest in their special interests. And they do not turn out a very good product in the last several years.
Is there more? Okay, Don? Excuse me, I'm going to go in front of you. Watch it, he's long-winded.
That's his way of saying dangerous. Is that your way of saying dangerous? I must say this. I'm relatively new on Facebook, and we always hear about how the Democratic people and the youth are moving forward and having great success through social media. I'm not a real whiz-bang guy on social media, but I have gone in the last month and a half and been exposed to how successful and how fast things can move there. So in line with this, I just did have the experience the other day of the proponents of this measure and being able to go in and have a little discussion with them. As a Scott Walker backer from Wisconsin, who was there during what was supposed to be budget negotiations, the legislators ran across the line into Illinois and the teachers played hooky. So I like to use that as an example whenever this comes up. And it looks like the teachers are obviously involved in the discussion. Thank you.
And actually, real quick before we get another question, and I appreciate you raising the social media. In addition to the campaign's website, we do have a Facebook page as well as Twitter feed, if anybody does that. And on Facebook, we get a lot of really good positive reception back from folks who are following us. We are doing daily postings about facts that we have discovered through our various analytical findings about, how the different flaws of this, the different costs, the different sectors that are going to be affected. And so we're working social media very hard, knowing that especially in this day and age with campaigning, that's a very easy way to get information out to the voting public.
One more question, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Frank Britton, perhaps an incendiary question. I think that Washoe County school district needs more money. I think they can actually take advantage of it. But my question is there any rational chance that extra money for Clark County School District is actually going to produce any useful results?
I'll let the experts answer for that.
I'm glad you got that one.
Good answer. I guess there's one more question for you.
Hello, my name is Eric Sheets. I actually see this as a potential opportunity. We have businesses definitely coming together. We can galvanize this as a state issue. Also, the media message, I think, and you've already said that, that's going to come out by the teachers' unions, is this is for the kids. Well, this is also the opportunity for us to show the schools how we can impact and what we can do as business community to support the schools, working with Educational Alliance or whoever that is. Is there a component that you guys know of that we could get involved with?
From the campaign standpoint, our #1 mission is to defeat this. But we are seeing small business groups, chambers of commerce, individual businesses who are saying, we want to be a part of whatever the ultimate solution is. And we can't come up with a solution until after this passes. However, you raised a good point. In some of my conversations, especially out in the rural and smaller populated areas, small businesses are the fiber of those communities and are very much involved with their local schools. And we have it here. I don't want to dismiss that. But smaller schools especially are very reliant on businesses who help with their sports events, and we do have it here. And they are having to take a look and say, and I'm hearing this anecdotally, if I'm going to be taxed and it's going towards education, I have to revisit how much I do philanthropically out of my own pocket to help some of these schools because my money is otherwise going to be redirected. And so I think, to your point is, okay, how can businesses get involved? And I know there's been a lot of activity over the past several years in Washoe County of, businesses working with schools to help support individual schools. They adopt a school or they open up internship opportunities, that sort of thing, to give them, business on the ground experience as well. So I agree. I think there are a lot of opportunities out there that then help go beyond this initiative, question 3, once it fails.
Thank you. Nicole, we appreciate it. Now, for all of you, just a few brief announcements. I already told you about next month's meeting, which we have some great potential speakers. But the next thing is, there's also, and they've been announcing for us, Mount Rose at the last Wednesday of this month has a dinner meeting at Tamarack Junction. And I wanted to announce that. The other thing is, before we adjourn, all these candidates have brought literature are available, Randy, all of them, to sit and talk with you and answer any questions for you. And I'm sure they'd appreciate it, and you would too. But before we do that, Carolyn Smith's going to do the raffle drawing for the money.